when you're tough, you're not necessarily maybe like thinking or acting in the best Christian like intentions, maybe.
Yeah.
Especially especially when guys like us think of being tough. You think of maybe physical altercations or stuff like that, and that was where I feel like I could have been a little bit better with.
Hi, I'm Justin Romano, and this is Wisdom is Wealth. Wisdom is Wealth is designed to give you guys practical insights, modern strategies, and even timeless philosophies around gaining wisdom in your life. The wiser we get, the wealthier we will become. This podcast really is inspired by the book of Proverbs in the Bible, which was written by King Solomon, who prayed to God for wisdom and as a byproduct became the wealthiest person to ever live. If he was still alive today in present day, he'd be worth $1.3 trillion with a T. Not because he prayed for wealth, but he prayed to God to give him wisdom. And as he grew wiser, as a byproduct, he grew wealthier, particularly financially, but not just stopping there, in every facet of his life. And in my own life, I have realized that the wealthier I become, it's truthfully just because I have become wiser in life. I'm gonna bring on guests that are incredibly successful, incredibly amazing human beings, and have an amazing financial wealth that they've grown for themselves. And they're gonna share wisdom on their life experience in totality in hopes that something becomes valuable for you to implement in your process, in your life, and in your journey, and see how wisdom truthfully is wealth. Welcome back to another episode of Wisdom is Wealth. I got a really special guest here today. We're shooting it from my office in person. Actually, I think this is my first in-person guest, and I like to call him my baby big brother. This is my brother that's here with me today. He goes by Jay. We're going to get into that here in a little bit, but Jay, man, welcome to the show. Pumped to have you here.
Yeah, me too, man. Couldn't be more excited to start this journey with you and being on my first podcast, my little bro.
Yeah, man. And I feel like every time we have a conversation, it is a podcast episode. Mm-hmm. We've just finally decided to hit the play or the record button. And something that has been spoken about before on my podcast, and some of you may know. If you don't, now you will. Amazing, funny story. Me and my brother actually have the same name. I said he goes by Jay because he was basically forced to change his name when he met us back in the day. And getting into a little bit of the story here, we're half brothers, so we have the same dad, different moms. We met when he was 13 and I was 4. And he just so happened, we won't get into too many of the details. We just so happened to have the same name as me. And when you met us, was it like, did they give you options of names or just
No, it was basically like you've been Justin your whole life and you're older and you have seniority, but you're going to have to switch your name. So I was like, I don't really know how this works, but I'm going to roll with it.
Yeah. I never thought of that before, actually, that the older one had to switch his name.
Yeah.
It's usually like, you're only 4, we could call you Jay.
There was no seniority at all that played any effect in this decision. So.
Well, we've been told it's a coincidence. We're not here for those details today. We'll get transparent and vulnerable a little bit, but we're going to keep the positive vibes today. And so something that I remember that's very humorous and positive for me when I first met him is the old house that I used to live at. I think I came home from preschool. And this is at least my first memory. I believe that I saw you or met you before that. It'll probably come through in your story. But I came home and, yeah, your brother's there waiting for you. I'm 4 years old. I'm just finding out I have a brother, which I'm pumped about because I had a sister at the time who just told on me for everything, and so
still does.
Yeah, still does. Love you, Sammy. I was really excited to have a brother, and so I come into the kitchen and I remember just hiding behind the wall in the kitchen where I could peek my head through the dining room door, and Jay was in the dining room holding up, what was it, a Toronto Raptors?
It was a Toronto Raptors
hat.
Okay, yeah, hat. It was a hat.
It was a hat, and so we're originally from Rochester, so we're really close to Toronto. So the Toronto teams sometimes are the people from Rochester's favorite teams, and so Toronto Raptors being right there, and I peek my head around, and there's this 13-year-old dude I'd never seen before with the cleanest bowl cut you will ever see, man. This thing
That's totally false, by the way.
This thing was fresh, man. And he was just trying to like get like a little dog to come around the corner, like holding up the gift and whatnot. And I don't remember how long it took me to come into the dining room or whatnot, but that is my first memory with you, and we've got plenty since. But And I always just, it's just one of those memories I could really just remember almost every detail about what was happening.
Well, my version of the story is a little bit different. First of all, I came in with a sweet fade, looking fresh. There was no bowl cut, so I don't know where that came from. But no, seriously, we came through and Dad was like, you know, you got a little brother and he's got the same name as you. And I was like, okay, this is a lot. And then when we went to go into the house to meet you, it was basically like you said, you were hiding behind things and was like, who's this guy in my house? And I was like waving this hat, like, you know, like come play with me. And it was pretty funny.
Yeah. I think I love this story though about when he brought you to preschool.
Oh, yeah.
Wasn't that when you first?
So he just wants to glow everybody for everybody that's listening to this podcast. Yeah. So basically, he picks me up, and before we came to get you, he was, you know, telling me about my brother and sister and explaining things. And we get to the school, and we get out, and we're walking towards the playground to go, you know, basically pick you guys up. And I just remember him like getting this smirk on his face, and he was like, "Can you guess which one's your brother?" And I was like, "Okay, I guess we're gonna play this game." And I started looking around the playground, and there was a little kid getting chased by a couple girls, and I was like, if we have anything in common, then that's probably my little brother. And, that's basically how it went.
Dude, that's so funny. It does sound, now that you say it out loud, that I was going for a little bit of gloat, but I just think it's so funny. And he never fails to, throughout our whole childhood or our adulthood, to tell that story to all of my girlfriends I brought home, and then obviously definitely my wife. Stirring up trouble as a toddler. But fast forward though, a couple of years later, you're living with us for a while. Another hilarious memory that I have is we had bunk beds. So imagine being, I don't know, over you, about maybe 14, 15 at this time.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And you're just in a bedroom with your little 6-year-old brother having bunk beds, and I had the top bunk, and we're sleeping one night, and Jay's on the bottom bunk, and he's on one side, and he's laying on his right shoulder. And somehow out of the blue, the bunk bed broke, and my top one fell through down to on top of him. And again, mind you, he's laying on his right shoulder. All of this bed that has fallen on him and me is on his left shoulder. And I hop off, and I'm just expecting him to be hurt, injured, at least awake. And not only was he not awake, but he still wasn't waking up as we were shaking him. We're like, Jay, you gotta wake up. The bunk bed fell on you. And then you finally opened your eyes, and I remember you getting a little bit of pissed that we were waking you up. We were like, dude, we're just trying to help you out here.
You do not want to be woken up as a teenager. I give all the credit to my sleepy fan. I think it just put me in a state of mind, well, a state of sleep that I wasn't gonna let anything wake me up.
I love telling that story to people, and it sounds like I'm over exaggerating. And don't get me wrong, from time to time I can get a little deep into a story where I stretch some details, but I feel like I'm almost underselling the dramatics.
Well, the detail that we definitely got to bring out is I didn't name my fan the Sleepy Fan. I think you nicknamed it the Sleepy Fan when I went to come visit you. I think one time, and I packed the fan with me on my trip. So I think there's levels to this that you just weren't ready for, and I think you just had to name it the Sleepy Fan.
I can't sleep without it.
Can't
sleep without it. But anyways, let's talk about, I know you and I have both kind of grown in our faith over the years, but you brought something up the other day that I never clicked until you said it the other day, where like you were brought up in the church with your grandparents, and then you kind of had like, let me take a break from it, and then hopped back on, which was interesting for me to hear because I wasn't brought up in the church. I never took a break. I just found God, when I was 25, 26 years old, and have just been in the church since, So
when you say that, I don't feel like I took a break. I feel like I got complacent and I wasn't thinking necessarily that I needed to upkeep with my faith. I thought I was actually thinking about it today where I was thinking like, how I like to refer things with sports and stuff like that.
Yeah, sure.
I was almost like I was a 16th seed who punched my ticket to the dance, and I was just so happy that I was in that I was like, I'm good. I'm saved. I'm going to heaven. We got this. And I just thought, live your life and you're good. I didn't think I needed to keep sharpening my tools in terms of, how to fight off temptations and just living a better life. Yeah. So I don't think when I was going through it, I thought I was taking a break. I think that a big thing too is I went from going to Christian school and being in church a lot to being home a little bit more because my grandfather got sick, and then going to a public school. And I just think that once the rules changed or the game changed, I think I got a little bit too comfortable and maybe would have let my guard down. And you know what happens when we do stuff like that in life. When you let your guard down, a lot of times that's the opportunity for, you know, the devil or temptations to kind of come creep in.
Yeah. It's a really good point. And the complacency part, and also like which one I want to start with. I think what popped out is it's hard enough to continuously follow and be diligent day in and day out with our actions and our actions with building our relationship with God. I can only imagine as a kid, not fully understanding, not fully getting it, particularly because you need life experience, I think, to fully get why we need God. You need to touch the hot stove a bunch of times and make a bunch of mistakes and be purified through tension to really understand it. And it's still, as an adult, even going through all that, it's so hard. Even for me to wake up every day and start with God, pray, dive into the Word, be diligent with my relationship with Him. I can only imagine as a kid, especially when it just feels like rules that don't make sense. And then those are taken away between your grandfather passing away and then you switching from, you said Catholic school or was it Christian?
Yeah,
Christian school to public school. Yeah. And then not having the rules anymore, not having to wear a uniform anymore, and then also all of the kids around you and even the classes that you're taking no longer
everything was different.
Have Christ.
Yeah, especially the fact that you add in the fact that my grandfather was the head of the family and always led by a good example and was a deacon in the church. And it was almost like when he passed away, I felt like I had to obviously kind of be like the man of the family, but it was a struggle between how do you stand up and be a good man of God and a good example, and how do you still be tough and be kind of like the protector. And I think that's something that I struggled with in terms of what were the boundaries or what was the time to pull and then like the time to maybe step up and fight a little bit more in terms of, you know, spirituality, in terms of, you know, helping the family out with things. And that's a thing I think I struggled, because I think a lot of the times we think that when you're tough, you're not necessarily maybe like thinking or acting in the best Christian like intentions, maybe. Yeah. Especially when guys like us think of being tough, you know, you think of maybe, you know, physical altercations or, you know, stuff like that. And that was where I feel like I could have been a little bit better with basically splitting the two and not committing to either side.
It reminds me of a post that I made recently about like what a real man looks like, and me and Lauren were having this conversation when we were like a real man, let's just even say a strong Christian man, like one that I think God really wants us to be. When I say a real man, I mean like who God created men to truthfully be.
Right.
And, you know, her and I, before we got to characteristics that we think are included, we immediately excluded the man that is like the macho man, super tough, don't talk about your feelings, right? You know, trying to get into fights all the time, or, you know, sop it up buttercup type of mentality. And don't get me wrong, time and a place for some toughness like that, right? But we agreed that that's just definitely not it. And what you and I were talking about the other day, where I've asked my mentor before, I'm like, what's the difference between people, particularly men, that make mistakes, learn and grow and live a better life, and make mistakes and never learn and grow and kind of just keep repeating the same life, the same mistakes, the same cycle for the rest of their life? And his answer to me was their ability to be weak. And what he was saying is that, you know, a real man, someone that can apologize, learn and grow, someone that can evolve through life and actually live the best life possible for them and not have their young mistakes hold them back for the rest of their life, is their ability to be weak, to simply say, I'm wrong, I don't know how to do this, there must be a better way. I'm willing to admit that, and I'm willing to seek other ways. I'm willing to say that I was wrong. I'm willing to admit my wrongdoings. I'm willing to apologize for them, learn and grow, right? But really it all starts with like, I'm doing this the wrong way. I don't know how to fix this. I don't have the answers, right? There must be a better way. Like that's the weakness my mentor was talking about. But if you think about it, it's funny we're calling it weakness because that's actually true strength. That's true strength. And so, you know, as you're talking through that, you know, it's funny that you had those questions at a young age, because I never did. I always just was like, I'm gonna be a tough guy.
Yeah.
There is no showing your feelings, and it just like one of the, like, you just think of a movie, think of like the jock who was a bully in the movie. Like that, there was never even a question for me. I just always thought that 100% was the answer. And I was telling somebody this story the other day because I've been taking back over a lot of the marketing for my companies and the branding and creating a lot of like the logos and a lot of the content on social media. Though I have the resources, whether that's human or financial, to outsource a lot of those things, and I have for years. I just thoroughly enjoy doing that. I thoroughly enjoy being creative, like getting on my computer and redesigning the website, right? Creating some content for social media, making a logo, right? Playing around with the colors. And if I correctly from my childhood, I used to love drawing and painting and coloring, right? But somewhere along the way, it fell off. I think around 8, 9 years old, where it wasn't cool. Dad wasn't pushing that on me. It was sports. Go out and hurt people on the athletic field, right? And I lost that creative, that sensitive side to me, right? And then, go through high school, just biggest tough guy, at least on the outside, that, you'll ever see, right? Get into college athlete, tear my ACL a bunch. So I had to be that tough guy. Like, there was no room for emotions in college, especially when you tear your ACL 4 times. You got to be pretty cold-hearted to overcome that and still accomplish what you want to accomplish. Then getting into the science side of things, then working for Hopkins, it's all black and white and factual. And, over the past couple of years, just reignited that creative, that feminine side of me, and also just being able to talk about my feelings. And my life has drastically changed. And so, it's just funny that we did grow up very similar and we have the same name, but there's differences in the childhood between you being brought up in the church and also having that question.
But something that I didn't even know.
No, I'm done. That was a riff on my end,
but something that I had struggled with was I felt like that inside, but I couldn't let anybody else know that. Like, you have to keep that shield on so that way everybody knows that you got this and you're tough and whatnot. And the minute that you put that shield down, it's like you could be vulnerable. And I never had a problem with admitting I was wrong or my feelings, but I didn't want you or any of my peers to know I was weak.
Yeah.
And any sign of weakness to me was like, all right, you got to shut that down and clean that up before anybody sees that.
Yeah.
And I think the more that we grow older and we get more mature, it becomes more of it's almost manly and it shows that you're becoming a man and you're growing stronger when you can admit these faults that you have. And sometimes being a man, that's the hardest thing, is not portraying this tough guy image or this person that everybody knows on the outside and being like, all right, let these inner characteristics kind of shine and kind of come out a little bit more.
Yeah. I 1000% agree. And it's not to swing the pendulum and say like maybe the toughness, I don't know the best title to put on it, but that is needed for, and it's circumstantial. Like, we have to be we still have to be masculine, right? And but I just think understanding what is true healthy masculine look like. Like, trust me, when it comes to protecting my family and standing up for what I believe in and what I think is right, there is that masculinity, that toughness if needed, right? But I truthfully just believe it's necessary in those scenarios, but balanced out by true femininity, which is just being able to talk about your feelings and actually admit when something's wrong, which is something I still struggle with an absolute ton. Like, I've gotten a lot better at letting God into a lot of things in my life that I historically didn't think I needed him in, like my finances and my business, where it's like, God, I need you at these things, these 2 categories. I got it. I think over the past year or so, I've been really good at letting God in, let alone needing to let him in to those things to really get to the next level. But the one thing I still struggle with is even telling God when I'm stressed, even telling God when I'm scared, even telling God when, I have these negative feelings, right? That like I'm bottling up. It's like he wants us to tell that. And, over the past couple of months, I've just been getting better at bringing those things to God. Yeah. But I find that the problem is because I was raised to feel like those feelings are wrong, to suck it up, not say anything, even to the point where I'm holding it back from our Creator.
When it came to the business and with, going to God for more things, was it hard for you to decipher which was you just being confident in yourself and what part of you was just being arrogant?
Yeah.
Because I don't think there's anything wrong with the confident part. Like, I can do this, because you have to, put your actions forward, but also putting your trust in things that he could kind of take care of.
Yeah, I think the confidence because and humbly and gratefully, and obviously it was God the whole time, even if I didn't realize it, but the amount that I've been able to accomplish and overcome in life, not even just in business wise, just even dating back to, childhood, college particularly, and then a lot of the things that I was able to do, academically, athletically, and career wise. And then to start this business and have the success that I did and have it so fast. And then just have a skill set. I have a very good skill set in solving problems. I can solve problems very well. I'm one of the best problem solvers I know. And all of that right there will lead you to think that you're God, or lead you to playing God in a lot of categories of your life. And so it makes you very self-reliant, where if a problem popped up right now, I could probably pull open my computer, call a few people, and solve it, right? The hitch that I'm trying to throw in now is before I jump to take action, I pray to God first. One of my buddies, Cody Cottle, he was on my podcast when it was the old brand, and his brand is called a Christian Entrepreneur. And this dude knows scripture. He knows Bible, and he teaches people how to run business from a godly standpoint. He always talked about how to make God your CEO, right? Where before you go to make decisions, it's like, instead of you acting like the CEO, pretend God is the CEO. God, what should I do in this scenario where this problem popped up, where I have this goal? Is this from you, and how do you want me to go about it? And it's crazy to see God work once you pray those prayers. And so it's tough. It's really tough. But now looking back, I realized that for one, no, I could have done none of it without God. He was there and working with me the whole time, whether I acknowledged it or realized it. And then two, now I just have a bunch of experience of going about my business and my finances without God, and going about my business and my finances with God. And the second option is so much better.
Yeah, I love that. Laura and I were actually having a conversation this morning while we were having coffee, and I was telling her how, I know you probably heard this story, but your husband and I have this quote where, where I had told you when you were younger, to whom much is given, much is expected. And I was telling her at the time I had made the decision to tell you the quote. It was based on, succeeding in academics and doing good in sports. And fast forward years and years later, I'm sitting here this morning having coffee with her, and I say it, and I'm thinking to myself, I never thought that it would go as far into your business, and then as far as to finding Christ and making him a bigger part of your life, and actually going through with a lot of the things you went through. And I was more proud at the time when I made the quote, and we had talked about this. I was proud of where you were headed, and I never thought that it was going to reach the level it's reached now. And I'm almost even more proud of you than I was before. But it was almost like I took that situation and put it in a small box, and you took that small box and turned it into something way bigger, and I'm super proud of you for that. Well, I just wanted to let you know that.
I appreciate it. I even remember where we were standing when you first told me to quote it, and it made a lot of sense. And I remember just in my young brain, it's one of those things where somebody says something to you and it fully clicks, to the best of the ability that you can. And it's something that I constantly remind myself of, particularly because it reminds me of the other quote that many are called, few are chosen. Right? And when God chooses you to do something special here on earth, not that he doesn't choose something special for everybody, but when there's just this higher, greater calling for your life, much is given, much is expected, much is required. And you can't even wrap your head around the plans that God has for you. And like you were saying, I put it in this small box, and you said you, meaning me, took it and turned it into what it is. And the truth is, God took it and turned it into that. As soon as I invited him in and really gave my life over to him, it's just incredible to see how his hand has moved in my life. And I appreciate you bringing it up, and it's a great story, and it's something that I constantly remind myself of when. Don't get me wrong, I'm very blessed. I love my life. I'm really grateful, but also I got a lot of pressure on me. I got a lot of stress, and there's some days I'm like, yo, F it, I'm about to sell this business. I'm about to sell this business, take a couple of million, and just turn into a surfer, but it's like, what would that do? That would just be selling the ministry that God gave me to be able to fulfill my purpose through and make disciples. And so it keeps me going and keeps everybody employed before I sell the business. So no, the employees listening can thank you.
Yeah, right. All right, I'll take care of it.
Yeah. But yeah, I think I'm happy that we've been able to connect on that over the years. And it's just, every time we talk, I think, not that do we learn more, I think that we hear more. Because I feel like a lot of the things that you've told me, particularly over the past couple of days since you've been here, and even over the past month or so, after we came home recently, like I'm actually starting to understand, right? I feel like I've heard it, I'm starting to understand now. And I think that's one thing that you brought up the other day when we were driving, where, with a lot of the things that we have going on family-wise, as soon as you made yourself open to understand, other people's perspectives, things started to make a little bit more sense.
Oh yeah, 100%. But sometimes it's weird because it's like sometimes you could have tunnel vision and only see it for something being cut and dry, and then you start to put yourself in on somebody else's shoes, and then you start to realize that things aren't maybe what they seem, or everybody's allowed to have their own feelings and opinions, and sometimes we just need to do a better job at learning those, understanding those, and just respecting those. And I feel like that's where I've definitely grown a lot as a man. So.
Yeah, it is understanding doing your best is trying to understand where other people are coming from, so to jump and make conclusions, and it helps us avoid a big problem that we have, that we were talking about last night, that I know I struggle with. Sometimes I'm just too direct, right? I'm too direct, and Jesus Christ was the best communicator who ever walked this earth, but he was the perfect blend of directness and compassion, right? Directness and compassion. Sometimes I have zero compassion and too much directness, and I think something that has helped me is just to be like, okay, let me step back here and put myself into their shoes. Another thing that's really helped me, I was just sharing this with somebody the other day, is not that I always listen to it, but it is a great compass for me, which every time conflict arises, right, no matter who it's with, I ask myself, right, I say, in a year after this conflict and the dust settles, if everything you said and did was put out on the table for everybody that you care about to see, would you be proud of everything on the table? And so that compass has really helped me, in addition to putting myself in to other people's shoes. But I think the biggest thing is that, the more that you grow in your relationship with God, the more that you just understand what he's calling you to do in every scenario that you're faced, especially conflict.
Yeah, I think that the way that you bounce back from that, like adversity, or when a situation like that arises, it's definitely how you deal with it and how you move forward with things. And I think you do a good job with deflecting those kind of things.
Well, thank you, man. I've had a lot of practice and a lot of failures, but you got to be young and dumb to be old and wise, or you ultimately, no matter what it is in life, you got to get it wrong to eventually get it right. And so, I think a big part of getting it right is hearing from God and on what he's calling us to do. And you and I were talking yesterday, and I truthfully believe that God speaks to us in 4 ways, and they get significantly or slightly, those are counterintuitive, we'll say slightly more intense at each step if you don't listen to the prior one. And so I say at first, God speaks to you with a whisper, right? It's like that little nudge, that little intuition that he's trying to tell you the right thing to do. You don't listen to that, then God speaks to you with a pinch, a little bit more intense. Can I get their attention now, right? Make it sting a little bit more. If you don't listen to the pinch, right, then God shoves you. Right? And maybe a little aggressive and a little upstate New York Italian here with this 4th step, but the last one, if you don't listen to the shove, like he just smacks you with a 2x4 across the forehead. Right? And I've been hard-headed my whole life, where up until I was about 30 years old, right, the only time I listened, if I listened at all, was with 2x4s. It had to get there.
Must run in the family.
It definitely runs in the family. And I know exactly where we get it from. But anyways, and, skills that I'm trying to develop in, as I grow into, a stronger Christian and into, a more godly man, is to being able to listen at the whispers, worst case scenario, the pinches. But what do you think it is, though? Why do you think that particularly males?
Well, one, we're hard-headed.
Yes, we only listen to the 2x4s. We take too many.
Yeah, for me personally, I always just think that I got this. If something happens, okay, no, just you got this. Just make sure you learn the next time. And sometimes you get complacent with your actions or the way you live your life.
Yeah.
And as a Christian, that's pretty hard to do. But for some reason, early on in my life, I kind of mastered it, where I could have 1 foot in and 1 foot out, and that's really no way to live a fruitful life.
Yeah.
I think it comes with, I don't know why we learn it's funny because it's like that's the theme that I feel like in my life personally, where I only learned from the Hacksaw Jim Duggan 2x4 hits, and that's no way to learn, but that's the only time it seems like where my attention is drawn to.
Yeah, I think wisdom, becoming wise, skilled at living is just starting to try your absolute best to pay attention to the whispers and the pinches and learn. But God's not punitive. He doesn't want to escalate things to a drastic level, but he will if it's his only hope at getting your attention to repent and come back to him. And something you said, the word complacency, and it reminds me of a conversation that I had maybe a couple of years ago, maybe 4 or 5 years ago with my buddy Chad. And I told him, I was like, Chad, this is really foolish of me. Chad, I don't need to read my Bible. I don't need to pray, or I don't do those things too much anymore because I truthfully just trust God, and there was some sincerity in that trust, but there's also a lot of foolishness in it. The sincerity was, looking at the life that God had blessed me with, despite the things that I've done in the past, the hurt that I've caused for other people, and the plethora of mistakes that I've made, let alone the abandonment that I had with my relationship with God for the majority of my life. And he still blessed me with the life that I had. I'm like, of course there's a God. There's no other answer for the life that I've been blessed with and the grace that I've been shown. And so, while that made sense and it was logical, Chad was like, I get what you're saying, but it's kind of like me telling you that just because I trust that my employer is going to pay me, then I don't need to manage my finances, right? I don't need to be diligent. And so, it was a great point. And, the word diligent, as we were talking about, it's used in the Bible a ton, particularly Proverbs, and it talks about, yes, be diligent at everything you do, which is just intentional, hardworking, purposeful, passionate. Right? But it particularly talks about being diligent with your relationship with God, right? Being diligent means being intentional and prioritizing our building and developing our relationship with God. And so it can permeate in everything we do. And I think, as we come to an end here, this episode today didn't have much of a script. We wanted to leave it loose, see where the conversation went. But if I could recap this, it's two guys that come from a very interesting background, that have made plethora of mistakes of their own, that, at times were the definition of crabs in the bucket for people that don't know that. Like, we're that one crab trying to get out of the bucket, and everybody around us is the other crabs at the bottom trying to pull us back in and keep us on the same level as them. That's the concept of crabs in the bucket. And, have struggled with that tough guy mentality and hyper masculinity, and have been very confused about life and how it should be lived. And many times in our life, but our development and our maturity, particularly as males, has just come to understanding that we need God in everything, right? And that's the most important thing. And even if you're criticized by the people around you, people don't understand that, people reject you because of that. You just got to remember that the 12 apostles, the majority of them were murdered after Jesus ascended back to heaven, and they went around prophesying his word, right? And they had chances at the end of their life, right? Where they're like, basically admit that you don't believe in Jesus and we'll let you live. And they didn't do that. They stuck with what they believed in. They stuck with what was real. And I think that's just a testament to, no matter the crucifixion that you're going through or the judgment that you may be going through while you're trying to grow closer to God because you truthfully feel that pull, that's what's the answer in life, if that's what's really going to provide the life that you want, keep going with it. Keep going with it. We have both been through a lot in life, have accomplished a lot in life, and, I've also had a bunch of failures, and we'll tell you that the foundation needs to be God, or life won't make sense. Life won't pan out the way you want it to.
Amen.
And so we'll wrap up here, but just want to thank the Brotherhood for coming on. We'll have to, unfortunately, put you as Jay in that description. We got to differentiate a little bit. How does it with the different last names? This is Romano, mine's Romano. We probably could just start calling you Justin. But until then, we just thank you guys all for coming back to my episode. And Jay, thank you for being here.
Of course, man.
Awesome. Well, thank you all again for coming back to another episode of Wisdom as Well. A little bit of a different twist here with an in-person guest, a little bit of a different frame if you're watching visually today. And most times I've got a pretty good script. I leave room for flow, but today was full flow. And so I hope you walked away with a nugget or multiple golden nuggets that's going to serve you and the people around you. And no matter what platform you're watching on or whatever is complimentary for the platform that you're viewing this or digesting this on, make sure to like, save, and share. If you know somebody that would benefit from what was talked about here today, share this content. I always say I'm trying to make content that's going to change the world, and I need your help with spreading that word. And so I love y'all. We'll see you in the next episode.